we're just sorting out a few more chairs. Make yourselves comfortable and we'll get started in a couple of minutes. Hello. Much better, thank you. And welcome to our very first startup of 2023. It is awesome to see so many of you. The very first thing I would like to do is just a welcome to country. And I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and their continual connection to our beautiful land, our water, and the community around us. So I just want to acknowledge the elders past, present and future as well. I would also like to say it is Sydney World Pride Month and it is wonderful to celebrate so much diversity in our community as well, which is very exciting. So today is all about startups and it is the number one thing our students asked for. So really exciting to bring it to you. I'm going to introduce the beautiful Melissa Hoyer, if we can give her a big round of applause. She's going to be our MC for today, and we have some wonderful speakers across different categories. We will have some time for questions and answers at the end, okay? And I'll be running around in heels, trying to get to all of you. So think of your questions while we're talking on the panel, and let's get started.
Thank you, Nick. You always look good running around in heels, so why change? Why change? Hi, everyone. My voice is probably a little bit deep today because I'm at the end of a cold, so it's probably going to be deeper than normal. So I'm just letting you know that to start with. Welcome, and thank you, of course, for having me again. I always love coming here to ICMS because I just feel always such an excitement with every student, and everyone is here for a reason, and I think it's so lovely with all of the teachers you have, all of the big guns who run ICMS are just so delightful, and what you learn from here is something that you'll never ever forget, and also will catapult you to extraordinary careers. I mean, every single person who has studied here does end up working nearly, well probably yes, in the area they want to. So I'm very excited to have 4 extraordinary people here, and I think we should be doubly excited that we do have one of those very big guns here today. So we have 4 speakers. Darryl Courtney O'Connor, who of course is the chairman and founder of the International College of Management Sydney and of Touraust Australia. Touraust. Darryl, of course, is the chairman and founder of Constellation Hotels, and in 1986 they had just 12 country motels. He established the International College of Management, and in 26 years since. I'd like you there, okay, if you'd like. Yes. Here he is, the man. I think a round of applause. The company had grown to employ more than 1,000 people. Darryl was appointed a member of the Order of Australia for services within the tourism and hospitality sector and to the development of industry education. Welcome, Darryl.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I won't kiss you. Sit down there. Okay, Caspar Schmidt. Welcome, Caspar. He's the founder and managing director of QCC Collection Group Proprietary Limited. It's a hotel. His company. It's a hotel branding expert company with many years of experience in operating and leading all aspects of multi-million-dollar hotel portfolios all around the world. I know so many of you are very interested in hospitality. He has launched and managed business hotels, apartment hotels, boutique hotels, co-working facilities, co-living concepts, as well as sustainable eco-retreats, of which there are more and more and more happening, particularly here in Australia. He's been a COO and a CEO in international markets and driven the expansion and development of well-known Australian, Asian and European groups, specifically with a focus on 5-star hotels, and don't we like that? 5-star hotels. Thank you and welcome. Our next speaker and our guest today is the wonderful Nandeeta Maharaj. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Nandeeta Maharaj. I got it right. She's the founder of Goods for Good, former marketing manager where she championed the Plate for Plate initiative to give back, working with Rise Against Hunger, which is her charity partner, Food Bank Australia, and building relationships with different businesses. Born out of frustration of not being able to buy everyday items that have a purpose, Nandeeta founded Goods for Good, which aims to give customers a platform to do just that. Goods for Good is where your everyday purchase can have the benefit of addressing some of the social and environmental issues we have in Australia and of course across the world. Welcome, Nandeeta. And our final speaker we'll have today is Fernando Tellier Motti. Such an exotic name. Fernando, welcome. Fernando's the founder of Motti and Smith Events. And again, another area that I know so many of you are interested in, event management. Co-founder of Motti and Smith Events, and I'm sure I've been to probably a few of them. He's one of Australia's leading, and I can guarantee that, event management companies. So he's specialised in food and beverage, events, hospitality and sponsoring solutions for major festivals, events and venues. And of course, this is probably the worst couple of weeks to get you, considering we are in the middle of, not the worst, it's a fantastic time, but you must be so busy because we are in the middle of World Pride and of course Sydney Mardi Gras. And of course his company is working with Sydney World Pride at the moment, and they are known for innovative and sensory event experiences, which we will be having today. So welcome, Fernando. I'm going to sit down and let's get this show on the road, don't you think, Darryl? Now we have 2 microphones here, so we're going to play a bit of mic. Darryl, I might give you that one first. Now, Mike, yes, do you mind? Thanks. Well, Darryl, it's really, actually, I think it's such an honour to have you on the panel. I mean, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Tell us, I guess, a little bit about yourself and why ultimately, after all that experience that you have had, why did you then go, bang, I'm going to open and start a college.
Wow. Wow.
You like that?
I'm not sure how long we've got, but I'll be
Yeah,
quick.
we've got not long between all of us.
Okay,
so
I'll be very quick.
Thank you.
I really appreciate everybody and everybody being here and listening to these people who've got their stories, and I'm really interested to hear them. With respect to the college, it began out of a situation where there was market pain. And what I mean by that was we had a hotel company of some 25 hotels. We were, under the period of Bob Hawke, we were given the opportunity with a training levy to use university graduates to come into our 25 hotels. Cut a long story short, after about a year, the general manager of those hotels felt that the university students were incapable of actually doing the job that they had graduated for. They had the piece of paper, but they didn't have the skill set that was necessary. So we decided it was that serious that essentially we would look at creating our own college based on the fact that the market wasn't being served by these graduates.
Brilliant. Thank you, Darryl. Caspar, I'll go on to you. I'll speak to the four of you about exactly what you are doing now, then we'll get really into the nuts and bolts. Caspar?
What do I do? That's a good question. QCC works in advisory space. So we work with international investors who want to get into Australia, and originally we actually set up in Hong Kong. I worked in China before that for a 5-star retreat brand, which I took worldwide. I actually thought there was a niche there that we could get into and really offer something unique out there. Then COVID hit, and then it got really interesting. We all got sent home, and essentially the QCC advisory business has then sort of turned from having lots of Asian clients to now having a lot of Australian and New Zealand clients. And yeah, that's really the space we're in. Brilliant. We have a lot of fun with that.
Thank you, Caspar. Nandeeta.
Right. So my journey started pretty much at an event where I heard a founder speak about their journey, and I learned exactly what a social enterprise was. So in the most simplest term, it's a business and a charity who had a baby. So I realized, wow, I've always wanted to work to build purpose into what I do. And if I get to run a business, make a profit, not rely on charity and grants, but actually use the funds that I earn to further the cause that I'm passionate about, that would make it so much easier for me. So after listening to this founder speak, I pursued him until he gave me a job, and they have a program called Plate for Plate. For every plate they sell, they donate a plate. So that is one model. For social enterprise, there's a number of other models. Once that role finished, I looked around. There's over 20,000 social enterprises here in Australia, which are businesses for good. And they all work in their own silos. Some are very successful in their silos, some not so much. But for an average person, if they want to go start transacting with them, there is not one place where they can go find them. So that's where Goods for Good started. It's an online platform. I've got about 20 social enterprises on it, so I've got a way to go. And so I sell products from social enterprises. So every single thing you buy has an impact beyond just being an amazing product.
Beautiful, thank you. Fernando, hello.
Hello. Hi,
Tell
everyone.
us about you.
Good. So I graduated from ICMS in 2007, and I never thought really I was going to work in hospitality. So I studied event management, and then started working, got a job. My industry training actually was with Sydney Festival, and working in hospitality, looking after all the VIP events and all the catering solutions for the event. And then after a few years, I had my current business partner. He started working with me at Sydney Festival, and one day he said, why don't we go into business together? So we started our business. Our business basically is focused on food, beverage, and sponsorship, partnerships for events. So we act as that middle person between the client and the suppliers. So we contract all the food trucks for music festivals. So I'm sure you've been to Groovy Spilled Milk, and so on. So mainly music festivals, but then we do a lot of arts festivals as well. We're working with Cineworld Pride now, looking after all their catering solutions, and that's what we do now. So we've been in business now for 8 years. Yeah.
Thank you. So I guess, going on from, and I'll just sort of throw this question at all of you, if you would mind answering it. Are there a couple of turning points, or maybe one turning point that you sort of came to that made you successful? What was it with ICMS that you suddenly realised, oh, bang, we have become a success?
The first graduating class, 50% of them went straight into banking, and we couldn't understand why.
No.
And the banks said to us, well, it's a very simple reason. You're teaching the service ethic and the client relationship ethic that, again, the universities weren't doing. So your graduates, we can teach them the technicality at that stage of what we need in banking, and we realized that we weren't per se in the hospitality industry. We were much broader. We were across the whole economy in all service industries where there was a lack of providing. So we just it became obvious that we were not a pure hotel school.
Perfect. Caspar, with your business, when did you think, wow, this is success now?
I think when we started in Hong Kong, I started, it was actually a crisis. I was in the Chinese market, and suddenly the Chinese government stopped all funds going out of China. And that was with 3 months notice. So all the investments we were doing, all the retreats we were planning overseas suddenly had a halt. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. What are we going to do here? At the end of the day, I set up the consulting business, and I continued to consult for it's called Naked Retreats for almost 2 years afterwards. But I tapped into the owner's network, and I tell you this, guys, use your networks for anything you can. Link LinkedIn with anyone, just get on with that, because that's important, and it sells your brand itself. But I tapped into all of his mates and families, and they in China they somehow like to just buy trophies and sit with them and say, oh, I have a hotel and I don't know what to do with it, but you might need some help. So that was really what started it. And it went really fast. We had a really good turnover in the first 12 months, and then COVID hit. So, but yeah, it was interesting times.
Thank you, Nandeeta. When was it the moment that you sort of thought, okay, what I'm doing now, what I've created, this is pretty successful?
I'm a startup, so I'm still to reach that point. But I think things are moving in the right direction. Going back to COVID, I think it was a time where people stood still and took stock and really looked at what is important to them, where they want to be. Same with corporates. They wanted to be more socially conscious in terms of the way they did business. So I'm hoping that movement continues, because as that movement continues, hopefully my business will continue to grow. I think one of the key things I've identified is that the business is for people who are socially conscious and do want to make an impact and want to make a difference. And as media would have it, coming out of COVID, that's where people are heading. So hopefully I will be growing with that same trajectory.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. That whole idea of wanting to be more conscious is going to grow since the dreaded the pandemic. I don't think suddenly now, because we've sort of come back to life, it's not on our mind. If anything, I think people have thought, no, I do want to become more self-aware. So it's a really, really good point.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not about, I know everyone's got busy lives, they've got a lot happening. Something as simple as buying a product, a soap that pulls a person out of poverty, it's a no-brainer. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Fernando.
So for us, actually the beginning of this year, end of last year, I was thinking about, wow, how many events we've done since COVID. Because of course, COVID, we didn't have any events really. We had a few consultancy jobs here and there with theaters, but we didn't have any events on, right? Every single cancel. So, and then it got to the end of last year, and I look back and I was like, wow, we've done over 50 events, right? And that was the moment. But I also think it's very important for you, whatever you do, to look back and just to stop and actually congratulate yourself and go, and just as a reminder of what are you doing. Because sometimes you think, oh, I'm another event company, right, in Australia. But then you look at your relationships, you look at your network, and then you go, wow, I'm actually part of this community. You know? So I think it's very important for you to remind yourself in any situations. Yeah.
Nandeeta, what was, I guess, the first step that you took to start your own business?
Yeah. So I don't know how to run a business. I'm a marketer by trade. So that was one of the big things that was stopping me from starting. I actually didn't know what the steps were. And I work with New South Wales. I got a scholarship from New South Wales Startup, and I worked on a 8-week course where they took me from idea validation, doing research, working towards a minimum viable product. And after that 8-week course, I set myself a deadline and launched on the deadline I'd set for myself. So if I didn't do that course, I think I wouldn't have launched, because it gave me the structured approach to really think through what I was trying to do, who my audience was, what my purpose was, how can I build it into my business. And that was one of the really important things for me, because that is why I launched, because I worked for this company where I worked in the social enterprise space. So
I guess that is the scary thing about initially anyone wanting to start up their own business, literally jumping off the cliff. You know, because it could be, it could be the best thing you've ever done, or there have been so many examples of people starting companies and they just haven't gone in with the right tools. And so obviously you, in your own mind, you knew exactly what you wanted to do and went about it the right way. So congratulations.
thank you.
Now, Caspar, what about you? So what was it, what were the first steps that you took when you thought, okay, I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to have my own company, particularly in the world of hotels, which is such a mammoth area globally.
I think I look back 20 years experience running portfolios of hotels, startups, launching brands, being at that sort of C-level scenario where, you get to make the decisions and you get to really drive what comes out into market. I don't know, I was just ready. Like, I don't know how to explain it in any other words. It's like, at some stage you just, you got to be careful what you say, but you make a lot of money for other people, you might as well just take the step and try and do it yourself.
Exactly.
And yes, it was an enormous step, but at the end of the day, I've never really looked back. I think COVID made us, completely readjust and realign what the expectations would be. But I mean, if anything, COVID made me more creative. I mean, I created a modular built hotel room, which we built here in Sydney, and we're launching a brand called Motti Retreats, and we're doing that this year. We had sign up for 4 sites throughout COVID. And so we built the hotel rooms here. They're fully sustainable. Yeah. They're built out of Australian materials by Australians, and we can build them in 30 weeks.
Wow. Do we have some of those here in Australian?
You don't. So the modular builder contractor that I work with, they have product in market, but not in that space. So we have IP'd the actual designs.
Great.
And so we're rolling that out now.
That's brilliant.
But I mean, I think maybe COVID just had to. Something had to happen, and that just sort of, I guess, made me more creative.
It did.
And it's. I think you have those stop signs at some stage where you go, okay, I got to realign the process of how I think. And when everything shut down, it was an eye opener, really.
Darryl, talking of we just mentioned sort of financially before about when money, and of course, is my mic on? I'll speak loudly. I'll use this. Darryl, when you are pitching for funding, I get that is probably one of the well, you've been doing it for so long, you do it so well, but I guess for a lot of people it could be, initially quite daunting, particularly if you are starting up. What are some of the sort of pitching for funding, I guess, not tips that you use, but how do you go about doing it?
Well, if I just go back, for me, I work for an organisation, a very big organisation worldwide called Lend-Lease, and they had a property hotel company, and they decided, after I had tried to convince them to build a chain of hotels from linking Adelaide and Melbourne and Cairns, and they initially said yes, then they decided to walk away from it. So for me, if I can use that as an example, I think the most critical thing for me then was I made a decision, I'm not sure I can go back and think why, to have a go myself, to actually, I didn't have the sort of funds they were requiring, $18 million, but I had to find it. So I used a vision, and I sold a vision, and I sold that vision like you wouldn't believe for 6 months, and it took me a lot of ups and downs, but it wasn't until the final few days when the auction for these 15 or 10 hotels that were put on the market, and fellows by the name of Alan Bond and Larry Adler from FAI had a go.
Just a few big names.
Yeah. So I was lucky enough I sold the vision.
Yeah.
And I guess if it's really, really critical from my perspective, when you go into business on your own or you have an idea, you must know what it's like when you're going to get there. Don't worry about how you're going to get there, because whatever you think will change.
Yeah.
And it'll change ad infinitum. The most critical thing is to know exactly where you're going to go, and that's what you've got to sell when you come to raise money.
Perfect. Fernando?
Yeah, in terms for us, it's really, we look for funding through government agencies to create events, for example. So our really funding for our business was because we are a service-based business. So it wasn't really crucial for us when we started our business. So it was about the relationships, really finding those clients through our relationships, existing relationships. So now after COVID, so the government, of course, put a series of different funding opportunities for event management companies and new business. And so it's important for you to go out there and have a look at what government funds are available, what other types of funds are available. And as Darryl said, it's very important to have your a vision, understand the briefing. Usually for fundings for events, you really are responding to a briefing from a government agency, right? So really understand the briefing.
So Fernando, how long was it until you started to turn a profit? We don't need to look at your books or anything, but
no, that's okay.
So but was there a moment where was it a year? Was it 2 years? Was it where you suddenly went, okay, no, what we're doing, we're happy with, and we are starting to turn a profit?
For us, from the get-go, was always because I started the business. Pretty much, I had a business working for Sydney Festival, but I still had other clients on the side before I turned this into a business with my business partner, right? So for us, and that's the beauty of it. Sometimes you don't need much money, or you don't need money at all to start a business, and that's what's That's
what we like to hear.
Well,
actually.
exactly.
Not needing any money to start a business.
No, you just, and especially if service based. To put an event on, you can find sponsors, you can find people that will want to partner with you to do the event. So
and that's a matter of again. Just keeping those contacts, as Caspar was saying, use, I'm not going to say use and abuse, I don't mean that at all, but whatever contacts, and I always say this to other students and other people I speak to, if you are invited to go somewhere or you go to an event, when you meet people, remember who they are, what they do, because down the track, there might be a moment in time where that person will be able to help you in some regard. And I'm not saying it as you're using someone, but contacts contacts. One of the most important things. And I think because we were inside, we weren't able to go outside for a few years, we lost the art of going up to someone or going to an event and meeting people. So if you have the opportunity to go somewhere and you are going to meet some people within the world you want to work in, go up to them, introduce yourself, because they will remember you.
Yeah,
don't you think, Fernando?
And the other thing as well, it's very important, it's not only the people that are up there, it's from the cleaners that are working at the event. And it's every single person you come across is the way you treat people. And it's so important. Those relationships are so important.
I remember the amount of editors I worked with, who when I first met them, they were young, first year student journalists, or they were what they used to call copy kids, and they would literally run up and down taking copy that journalists had written. This is before you were all born. They're now editing major websites, major publications, CEOs of media companies, and always just be kind and be lovely to everyone that you work with and you deal with. I think you four do that anyway, I'm pretty sure. When you think, okay, sure, we're talking, we want to talk success, obviously, but I'm sure there have been moments where perhaps there may have been some failures within your 4 very sort of diverse careers. Has there been a moment where there has been a moment of what you have perceived a failure? Darryl? I doubt Darryl's will, but anyway.
Yeah, I've had some. It's interesting. I don't use the word failure.
Yeah, it's learning, isn't it?
I just take it out of my vocabulary. And I do that purposely. Mistakes, and I've made plenty. In fact, probably I've learned more from the mistakes. They haven't been terminal, thank God, to date, but I think the critical thing is that I have had failures in business, and I'd have to say the reason for them has been nothing to do with strategy, nothing to do with finance, nothing to do with anything like that whatsoever. They've been to do with values and virtues of the people I was in business with. Mm-hmm. And that's a fundamental learning that I got, because in those 2 occasions I'm thinking of, it cost us hugely, where the people we were associated with were not on the same page in terms of values and virtues.
Perfect, thank you. Caspar, is there a moment, or has been a moment where you've thought, yeah, we won't use the word failure, that something just didn't go the way it should have, and if so, what did you do to sort of right
Definitely.
it?
Look, I think again, it's, you have challenges, you just got to get through them. I had a partner in when we started, and we trusted blindly when we went into the Chinese market. And look, if you don't understand Chinese and you don't understand contracts and you don't understand if they're chopped or not, or they're chopped by the general's office, or they're chopped by someone who's a secretary, then you might think you have a signed hotel management agreement, but at the end of the day you can work for 6 months and you don't. Yeah. So you learn the hard way. But I think, look, at the end of the day, it's about trying, understanding, and then reevaluate, and then start again. Like that's all I can say to you. You're going to have ups and downs, without any doubt. We all do, but it's how you go about it. And I think the fundamentals is what Darryl says. It's about values. It's about who you are as a human being. And as Fernando is saying, it doesn't matter who you have in your teams, what they do. Treat them with respect and be nice. It's not hard to be nice. It doesn't cost anything to smile.
Exactly. Nandeeta, what about you?
I did have one very big learning, and it was quite a bit. It was fundamental to my business. As I said before, I went through an 8-week course just trying to work out, what are some of the things I need to do before launching. And as part of that research, one of the assumptions I'd made was most people understand. Excuse me. Most people understand what a social enterprise is. once I'd launched, and remember, most of the time I'm around people who actually work in the social enterprise space. But once I'd launched, I realized that most people actually don't. And the reason why I made the assumption, I based it on the fact that thank you is so popular in Australia and who gives a crap is so popular in Australia, and I thought it was a very relevant assumption to make. But unfortunately, people just think of them as good companies. They don't understand what they're trying to impact. And there's a lot of detail under what they're actually trying to impact. There's some very scary statistics that they're trying to turn around. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of the learning. But again, you've got to learn from it and grow from it. And so it's a word they use in startups, pivot. And so I look at social enterprise products, but one of the things I'm also trying to do is look at fair trade products, ethical, sustainable products, because those are words that people are already familiar with. And once they land on my platform and start engaging with me, then I can teach them all about social enterprises.
Fernando?
Yeah, for us, I always find that building a business is there's no manual. You learn as you go. We learn as go so many times, from accounting, from employment agreements, from everything. I had no idea about how to set up a business, right? So you learn and you go, and at the same time you keep going and you keep, working and getting more work to allow you to build your business, right? To get expert advice and things like that. So we had actually a business manager that came and worked with us for 6 months, right? But that's when, probably was about 3 years after we set up the business, right? Because we didn't have the funds to do that in the first place. And so my biggest thing, we had events that were not a failure, but it was pretty scary, and you have to make sure that you've got, for me, the most important things is contracts and legal. If you can spend your money in one thing, is get legal advice, because I think that's very important. That will save you a lot of hassle down the track, right? So I think I learned that very quickly with one event that we did, that we got into, a bit of a trouble with that. So after that, and the most important thing, as well as Darryl said, is work with people that you share the same values and that they believe in the same thing. Because if you don't like the people you're working with, forget it. It's not going to work.
Yeah. I think if we are.
Can I just ask quick? With the legal part, you can have contracts in place and you can still be taken to the cleaners. Okay, so just
yeah, true.
I think Darryl was nodding his head about that as well.
Even in this country, I mean, I've worked with institutional funds where you have projects and you keep on sending bills, and then we're changing financial controller, we're changing this, we're changing our payroll system, we're changing this, and then 3 months later you have X amounts outstanding, and then suddenly you're told, the fund needs to restructure. So another 6 months, so then you're out. So I think, just as Fernando says, get a contract and make sure that you are happy with what's happening and you follow up. Yeah. Your accountant needs to be on your side. Yes. Okay, and there's a lot of things you can think of afterwards, but just really push that.
I bet you'd agree with all of that, wouldn't you, Darryl?
I feel for Caspar, because having had 3 hotels in China and 3 contracts, and after 6 months they suggested to me, each one of them independently, that really the contract was just an agreement to negotiate down the track. And I decided to hand the keys back on those 3 hotels and leave China. That's no disrespect, that's just what happened. I have to tell you what happened. But I would agree with Fernando and Caspar with regard to your legal people. They need to be very good. If you want to spend money, you spend it on legal people very well. And I think with my financial people, I personally think I've got the best in the world running this college with me.
Perfect. Well, of course, you only would get the best. Now you can keep hanging with that, because I'm working again. Sustainability, very important. I think we are all so aware. much more aware than we were even a decade away ago. And Nandeeta, you mentioned that when we just spoke to you a minute ago. How important is sustainability now to, I guess, to each of your businesses, and how important should and can it be to with a new company, with a new startup?
Look, for sustainability, I had to build it in from day one. So every touch point in my business, we considered it. The type of products we've got on our platform so I've done the research so my customers don't have to. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of work done in the background to make sure that every single product was, first of all, being sustainable, ethically sourced, there's no slavery in the chain, production chain. All of that is almost a basic, a given in terms of the way social enterprises behave. What they do over and above that is what makes them different, what makes them special. So they're sustainable, they're ethically sourced, they are more than comparable to any product on the market that is not a social enterprise. But when you work with a social enterprise and when you buy their product, the impact is profound. It's so far-reaching. So not only are you buying a really good product, but you are actually helping a cause without changing your behavior at all, just by choosing to buy from a social enterprise.
And Caspar, what about you with, particularly in the world of hotels, sustainability has become beyond...
Everyone's talking about ESG,
yeah.
but are they actually doing something about it? That's the next question.
Exactly.
I think every conference you go to, you have some panel that goes, we've rolled out an ESG campaign and we're doing this and this and this, and then a year later they're saying the same. That's a good question. I can't answer that, but in my business with our retreats, we've decided to be purposely different. So being purposely different means that we decided to construct, build, and create here in Australia and be as sustainable as we possibly could. So that doesn't mean that we wouldn't source materials from somewhere else, but as long as they're sustainably sourced, then we're happy with that. But we'd like to try and tell the Australian story so that we create jobs.
Yeah.
And building retreats in Tasmania, for example, we work with all the locals. We source all the FF&E in Australia in and around the local areas. We fit the minibars with local produce. We do all these things so that we can try and make a difference. And I think, in a couple of years, hopefully I can look back and I can be proud of what we've been doing in that space. But I think it's like that need is there, and it's been there for a long time. But a lot of people talk, but they don't action.
Action, exactly. Well, Fernando, with events, and I know that it's such a big thing, as we know, the event world, and particularly Australia, we do love an event. Sustainability, I guess, when it comes to, often I'll maybe go to something and you sometimes look at what is left over, and you think whether it's food or drinks or props that have been created particularly for an event, staging. How does it affect sort of the event world trying to be as sustainable as possible?
Well, it's a very it's very interesting in terms of sustainability, because you need to look at something. If you want to find out if something is sustainable, you have to track that until the end of its life.
Yes.
Right. And that's what happens with events. So a lot of the waste that is created at events, you need to understand where this is going to. Is it going to landfill? Is it going to be processed by a company that only process whatever aluminium or whatever it is? But the public doesn't get to see that.
That's right.
Right. So the perception is, if you are an event, is that you see all these bins overflowing and you see all this rubbish on the floor. But most of the cleaning companies, now it's a standard that all the rubbish that's collected from music festivals and everything goes to a facility where everything gets sorted then. So today is very important. If you're working in events around City of Sydney has a big policy around that.
Yes.
Every single event, if you're building a new business, a startup, it's crucial that you have a sustainability policy and understand what what are you doing? So in events, you really need to look. City Mall Pride, for example, we're going away from single-use plastic. As you know, New South Wales has banned single-use plastic. So even, I'm not going to say the brand, but even a plastic bottle of water, for example, it is made out of 100% recyclable plastic, right? But it doesn't mean that it actually gets recycled, right? Yes. So we are very proud to actually, we got a partnership with the company, and we're doing aluminium bottles of water, which is really good. So initiatives like that are very important, right?
Perfect. As for entrepreneurs sitting next to me, what would be each of you, maybe your 2 tips to being a successful entrepreneur? Maybe Darryl, start with Darryl, then we'll go down the line.
The most difficult thing in a startup and creating a business, and I'm not talking specifically about IT, but businesses, is actually building the right team, building the right people around you. And you talked about sustainability. At the end of the day, my job now is to look over the horizon. So I'm looking well down the track. COVID changed education forever with respect to online education, but it also highlighted the things that we do best, which are face-to-face, social, relational and behavioural matters. But nevertheless, so my team design their own future. I don't tell them exactly what to do. They actually work with me to tell me where they see the future. So, but that takes time to build a team. So I really would encourage you all to firstly have a go, have a very clear understanding of where you're going to end up when you get there, what it's going to be like. Don't worry about the strategy, don't worry about the money, that'll all come. If your vision is clear, it will all flow from that. And we have a vision, we have a purpose, and we do things with integrity. And that comes back to that virtues and values issue. So, thank you.
Caspar? That's sort of the tips to being a...
I agree with everything you say, Darryl. I mean, I think I've always been a bit different in the way I operate. I find it interesting, actually. COVID made all the hotel operators think about empathy. I was like, guys, you've been in that business for the last 35 years.
Haven't you learned it by now?
And you just haven't used and utilized your teams there. So, look, it's all about people management. It's all about what you give. And as a founder, or as an owner, just treat people with respect and really, show that you care. When I was in hotels and I was running portfolios, one of my key aspects, what I always wanted to know was I wanted to know what my team members' families were doing, what their kids were doing, because that makes them feel good, and it makes me feel good that I understand if they have issues.
Yeah, there are so many companies now that I've dealt with, they all have people and culture directors. I mean, it has now become such a big role in so many big companies. So I guess that's where you're sort of going.
Look, I remember having a director of operations when I was at a big, large company in Australia, and he always said to me, Cass, you spend too much time with your team. Like, you're spending too much time caring about them and looking after them. And I was like, they're the one who runs the business. I don't run the business. I'm maybe guiding them. I'm showing them where I think we should go, and I'm showing them how to care about, our guests. But they are everything in this business. When COVID hit, suddenly that was, we must look after the team. We must show empathy. I'm like, what
shouldn't you have been? Yeah.
You should know this already.
Yeah. Nandeeta?
For me, being a solo founder and being in the whole startup community, one of the main things, if you end up being a solo founder, is whichever sector you end up in, find your tribe within that sector. I think being a solo founder can be very lonely sometimes. So I found the whole social enterprise community all over Australia. And that is really sort of where I go to re-energize, because once I'm outside the tent, the whole social enterprise tent, I find most people don't really understand what I'm trying to achieve. So just finding that tribe of people who are always there encouraging you, giving you advice, connecting you with the right people, telling you exactly where to go and pitch, who to talk to, I think that is really, really important. So it's a team, but it's not your team, it's just the team that you form within the sector. And the other thing is, if you've got a real passion and if you really are connected and you've got a purpose behind whatever you are trying to do, I think it helps in the long run, because there are lots of times where you're like, oh, this is all too hard. And I think if as you said, you've got the end vision, you know exactly where you're going, and you're really passionate about it, it really, really carries you through. So passion and find your tribe.
They're very important. Find your lane and find your tribe. Fernando.
Yeah, again, for me, I go back to, relationships. The other thing for me, it's very important, always know that if there is no solution, I always say if there is a problem, there's always a solution. If there's no solution, just accept it and move on, yes. Right? Because you always find a solution. And ask for help. Ask for people to help you, right? Don't be ashamed of asking for help, even from your competitors, because sometimes they will become your biggest alliance. Yeah?
I think probably this next question to you, Darryl, probably.
Okay.
I think everyone will be interested in this. So what is it about education, though, that is so important? I think a lot of people think, I'll just sort of go, I'll attempt to do this, I'll attempt to do that. They may happen to luck out, like many of our most successful people in the world have, flunked out and they haven't really had a good, strong, thorough education. But what is it now about getting a good education, specifically somewhere like here? What are the advantages of that?
Well, I think you're looking at it with Fernando. At the end of the day, from my perspective, what I see happening in the college with our graduates over the last 25 years is that their rate of growth, whatever business they go into, is greater than the norm. Mm-hmm. It's peculiar because it runs right through all the businesses and the social set industries that we're involved in, that they go in perhaps at the same level as everybody else's entry, but they rise faster. And it goes back to a simple thing as professional behaviour, professional attire, professional way they treat people. And you've heard it right across this platform. It's all relational, it's all about how you manage people will separate you. And I think people here get that. Hopefully it rubs off from the people who are teachers and here, and also the people that you meet around the campus.
And I guess, Fernando, having been a student here, how important, and when you look back now, how important was what you learned here? How important is it to your business now?
I mean, the college was the foundation of my professional career in Australia, no doubt. I moved here from Brazil, so, to study here. I moved here by myself, and I'm sure a lot of you are doing the same. And it's, but the connections I made through with the lectures with Anne-Marie Fling and with Val, I can see she's here. And then a lot of the different lectures over the years. So that was crucial, having that relationship and the amount of knowledge. And then I think amount of experience that we got just by organizing our own events and doing other things and working with external. I remember we started the celebrity chef's dinner that we had. So working with Giovanni Pillo.
Yes.
That was the first one that we did right here. It was amazing. So having that experience was and I'm just going to tell a quick story. So I had Would you?
Rabbit was the main course.
Rabbit
was
was
it?
the main course, yes.
Was it good?
Yeah, that's right. And we had, we did an event with Lend-Lease actually a couple of months ago, and last year with called Flow and Glow in the city. And Nicole organized a group of students to come and do a walkthrough of the event with us. And at that event, one of the students, I don't know if Sean is here today, but Sean, he was at the end asking questions, and I was like, this guy is amazing. He's asking a lot of great questions. And turns out that Sean now is working for us full time. So, it's amazing. And we're also very proud to be giving a scholarship as well to another student. So those relationships and the way you present yourself, and just giving the example of Sean, the way that he presented himself, the way he was asking questions, it was interest and everything, that for me was like, great. We need this guy part of our team.
We'll just have a couple of more questions to the panel, then we'll open it up to the floor, because I'm sure there'll be some good questions, and I'm sure people are needing to go and do things like study and learn stuff. Okay, artificial intelligence, AI, with chat GPT, all of that. How, when you're looking at, again, you're looking ahead, what are your thoughts about that? Is it going to sort of become a part of each of your careers or each of your businesses? Or is it something that really, it's not really going to affect each of your businesses?
Well, I see a lot of music festivals and events using that
totally,
for customer feedback, for when people are purchasing tickets, so they get that those automated responses, right?
Yep.
Straight away. So that helps as well. So eliminating a lot of having to have staff to really be there to respond, because of course 80% of the questions are always the same about ticketing, about general information about the event.
Yes.
But to be honest, I'm not too familiar yet. I've been trying a little bit, and I find it a bit scary, but it's amazing.
Yeah,
So
it is a bit scary.
Yeah.
Especially in the world of journalism, when stories are now being totally, as we've probably either read some of them or created by chat GPT or AI, artificial, and you think, but that could, it could be so wrong. So there could be potentially some very, very bad experiences, or if used properly, it could work well. What about you? I don't know whether...
I think for startups, one of the things that I'm not that familiar with AI at the moment, but I think the way it can help is you can't be good at everything, and then some of the jobs can be done by an AI. So I was talking to a founder yesterday, and she said she had to present to the board and she had to forecast how they're going to perform in the next few years. And she said someone at an event told her that there's AI that can do that for you now. You just plug in a few numbers and they'll give you how much money you have to make, how much products you have to sell to reach a certain point by a certain time. I'm sure it was already there, but I've just found out about it, so it's very exciting. So I think AI will help, jumpstart some of the startups to really help them succeed.
Yeah. Caspar, what about in your world?
Yeah, look, in hotels, I worked with a startup, New Zealand startup, who was fortunate enough to become a unicorn 100 on Microsoft's list last year. And they do a chatbot for reservations, and it's very, very popular. And they started that also because of COVID, because no one was in the hotels and nobody ever got any answers. So that's really, driving itself and become very popular. I think they've signed like 500 hotels in the last 6 months. So they're growing really fast.
Yeah.
But I think the chatbot, the chat AI stuff is, it's interesting when the Bing open AI guy or scenario, or whatever we call it, is now answering back and saying stuff like, I'm smarter than you, things like that. So I think there's we need to study it a little bit more But I think if your friend was forecasting and had an AI do that, I would probably go over the numbers a few times myself before I would share that with a board.
Yes.
But look, I mean, it's incredible. It can do anything, really. So, yeah.
Which, it is. It is incredible, but at the same time, quite scary. What do you think, Darryl?
It's a bit like online learning.
Yeah.
I think AI is here to stay and grow. From my perspective, it's more to do with business intelligence, and if you can use the data you have and if AI can help that to predict the outcome and forecast where you're going, then fine. I'm yet to be convinced in terms of the service industries just how in depth that'll go.
Yes, because there still is and will never, ever, ever be anything that will replace the physical one-to-one, whether it is hospitality, events, anything. So it can be used in tandem.
Yes.
But certainly, and there will be jobs, no question, unquestionably there'll be jobs that will be lost. But that's when you then have to revert to change yourself. So it's yet another interesting decade ahead. I think it's probably time for some questions. I think we might do that. Is everyone happy? Because I think people are probably going off to do things we've seen. So you can't remember that? Those things called classes? Yes, you do. I'm sure there's some questions, and if you do, we'll give the second microphone. There'll be someone.
Thank you very much. Anyone thinking of starting their own business? Yes.
Not starting my own business.
Oh, that's all right.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your presentation. My question relates to staying current. How do you or those that inform you enable you to stay current with what's happening and relevant? By what means keeps you current?
I personally read like crazy, and I think ongoing education is actually really important. It might be hard now where you're in it, you started it, and then you think, in 3 to 4 years I'm done. But it's a continuous evolvement around you, and it goes around to how you evolve in your brain going forward, essentially. So I read like crazy, and I have like 3 books a month that I have to get through. And Fernando and I have a common friend, Ben, who we share a lot of books together, actually, and like ideas, hospitality based in general, but just really cool stuff, and just keeps you relevant, I think, up to date.
For me, it is following leaders on LinkedIn and Instagram who are in the social enterprise space. And also reading, so just reading as many articles as I can about what's happening in that world. And the other thing is being part of the community. So there is a social enterprise committee for Australia. There's one for each state. So I'm a member of most of the states, and I attend their meetings, and I make sure that I have a voice in terms of what's happening in the community, where things are going, what decisions are being made, how we communicate with people outside the tent, and that's one of the things that I do to keep myself current, to make sure that I'm very much in touch with the community that I'm trying to be part of.
Yeah, for me, it's always being around. Well, I'm always around events, right? And so I attend a lot of events, even not the events that I'm doing, but also I go to a lot of events, being very social, and doing and accepting to do, talks and things like that as well, which we end up meeting wonderful people as well and sharing the experience as well. It's very important. So, but I guess, as you're saying, connect with people within your industry. I think that's very, very important.
I think also engaging with sort of younger people. I've got a 21-year-old son, so wherever he's going, whatever he's doing, like we actually have conversations about stuff. And I'll mention something, and he'll have no idea what I'm talking about, and vice versa. So then we actually, a constant conversation about what I know and what he knows, and we somehow sort of, I that's part of me remaining relevant, hopefully, in my world. Because when you're an older person in the media, it's like, as if she'd know that. But I think, no, hang on, I do know what you're talking about. My son just did that, or so I think even just that constant where you can liaising with people who, are in your lane, who are sort of part of even though they might be 20 years younger, but it's part of the tribe that you sort of appreciate, and you appreciate what they know, whether it's about music or, dance parties or things he goes to, and he's studying business at the moment as well, and I don't know, I think those conversations are so important to continue to have with people that are a bit younger than myself anyway.
Give yourself a hard time. Any more questions? Yes. See, I told you. There's always a time I have to run in heels.
Hi everyone. I would like to know, who are your mentors? Who do you look up to, even though you are so far ahead in your careers? Has there been anybody that inspired you along your journey, pushed you further than what you could have gone? Who are those people for you?
I actually read an article on LinkedIn, I can't remember who wrote, but it said, find yourself a sponsor. Find someone that you can always talk to whenever you need something. So when I started working for Sydney Festival, they had a catering manager there. Her name is Dan Jeffrey, and she's been in the business over 40 years. And she taught me everything I know today in terms of public catering and music festivals and big festivals. So I always revert to her. We always have an hour-long chats every week, and so find that person in your careers that you can always count on. That's very important.
Nandeeta? Sorry, then Darryl, sorry.
My mentor is actually the first guy who gave me my first job straight out of university, and that was many years ago. And he's still in my life. He's still my mentor. His daughter became unwell, and he launched a business where the products from that business actually helped his daughter get better, and now it's an internationally successful brand. And he's always been in my life. He lives here in Sydney, and I get to meet him every now and then. I've got access, I can call him whenever I want, and to have someone so amazing who's been there for me from day one, still in my life, has been, it's just, I'm very thankful for that.
Great. Caspar?
Yes, I have actually my first GM when I went into industry after I graduated my hotel school. It was I went to the States with the Hilton, and he was there, he's an Australian guy, and he's still my mentor.
Yes.
Yeah, still catch up with him once a month.
And he's still there?
He's actually moved to Australia now, so moved back. So he's actually in Sydney, so we catch up face to face, which is
perfect.
It's nice. But, it's been going 23 years.
Oh wow,
now.
that's great. Darryl?
Well, thanks. It's a good question. I'd say a number of things to answer it. I have an independent board, so I don't listen to my own bullshit. They tell me what they think of me openly. Number one. Number two, I have an A team outside of the board who I can call on various subjects, whatever they might be, who just give me advice on that particular subject. Number three, there was a man who had the most impactful impact on me of all things in starting up a business. He owned an organisation called the Pacific Institute. He died a couple of years ago. His name's Louis Tice. If you read his books, unbelievable stuff. And it's still going today, but he's quite famous worldwide for lots of things, and probably one of the most impressive men I've ever met. I went back to university when I was 50, completed a course, and every 2 years the graduates get together somewhere in the world. So it's a continuous process. It's not something that when you finish here, it's all over. Or it's just beginning. That's my view.
Great. Great answers. Any more questions? Yeah. Actually,
Oh,
sorry, Nick.
it's all right. Don't mind me.
Thank you.
Thank you, panel. Thank you very much for sharing your wonderful insights. My question is about dealing with rejection. So Walt Disney, famously, when he was starting up Disneyland and starting to generate his brand of Mickey Mouse, was rejected 300 times by different bankers around the world and in the US, telling him that he was completely crazy and that his business would fail. And well, now we have Disney today, and one of the most powerful and largest companies in the world. And so my question is, how do you deal with failure? How do you deal with not only financiers and bankers, because you're trying to generate the capital to start your businesses, but also to expand? How do you deal with people telling you, no, you're crazy? How do you sort of combat against that? Like, what tips and insights do you have?
It's interesting. Who'd like to
I'll have a go.
have a go at that? Excuse me.
I think you have to realize when you do a startup that you might be the only crazy one in the room. If you realize that, then you also understand that some people are not going to get you. And I think that's important. When we started up in Hong Kong, we met with a number of investors to begin with, and they were all like, Caspar, you're crazy. There's so many people in this market. Why are you doing this? And I was like, well, we actually want to, build a clientele where people actually believe we're there for them long term, and we're not just another advisory company that comes in and tells them this is what you need to do, and then we leave. We actually stay on. So if we negotiate a hotel management agreement, for example, for an owner, we stay on for 12 months afterwards. So we can actually help the owner understand the P&Ls. We can help them understand what fees are being charged by the operator, so on and so forth. And it just gives them a lot of peace of mind. They can sleep at night. So that was, you have to understand that people don't necessarily believe what you believe. And rejection is actually healthy at times. You can have crazy ideas and somebody will tell you 2 sentences in a meeting that goes for an hour, but you would take that with you and go, oh, that's what I had wrong. So finances can stack up, but maybe the idea is just wild and they just don't get it.
And also I think sticking, like as Walt Disney did, he knew in the back of his mind that whatever this crazy thing I invented, which we all know what it is now, he stuck with it, as opposed to giving up, and I know that is one thing that people, they give up a lot, because when you do reach the amount of rejections we all have had in different parts of our life, you do have to keep sticking to it. I think of other businesses that have, when we look at them now, they're very successful, but at the time, maybe who would have thought, the Yellow Arches and Ronald McDonald was going to be potentially one of the biggest fast food companies in the world. And these are things I'm sort of thinking off the top of my head. If you are in a boardroom and presented with that idea, it might be, I don't want to see a clown with a red wig on and white face, like all of these little elements. But if you stick to what you think is going to work and what you know, it can't help but be successful. Whether it ends up becoming as big as Walt Disney, who knows? But I think you stick in that lane that you know, and you hopefully can ultimately sell that lane to someone else, or they can help you finance, so you make all the money. Anyway, I don't know why I'm saying that. You're the guru. You're the gurus up here. Any other questions?
I think we have time for 1 or 2 more. I'll just head this way. I'll come right back to you guys.
Okay.
I suppose in some regards we kind of already touched on it, but obviously you've found your success to the point where you can set your prices and you know what you're worth and the quality that you provide with the services you have. But it seems like there's a perception in the market these days where people just want more for less. Mm-hmm. And so how do you distinguish yourself in like an oversaturated market where people are undercutting you and, trying to just take from you when really they're offering services that's at a lower quality anyway?
Well, for me, I had to learn that lesson. It's very hard. how to price yourself. It's very hard to put a value on what you do. And no matter how much you talk to people and how many companies are out there, and you always find it hard to do that. So I guess it's very important. Be very firm on know exactly what your value is, and just be firm about it. Because if you get one company that will pay what you're expecting to earn, and you do a good job for them, then you're going to continue to do the same. Right? Yeah,
you have to learn to say no, and I know that's so hard.
Yeah.
I even know in my media world, it has been shocking the last 2 years because they want everything for nothing. And even now, having been in that world for over 30 years, I still get people saying, we'd like you, can you come on and do this on TV or radio or write something? And they say, we can't pay you. And it's like, well, okay, and then they go and get a 22-year-old munchkin who doesn't really have the heritage brand or the experience, but they just don't want to pay you. And it is so demoralising because a lot of people just can't see the value in having people who actually have, look at this entire panel, they've all got experience and expertise and all of that. But if someone could get away with it, and they said to Darryl, can you come and do this? Look, we can't pay you, but we want you to give a keynote address to 600 people, and it's I think when it's a community or a charity thing, totally different story. I do a lot for charity, but when it's a commercial company, you have to learn to say no. And I know sometimes you then may miss out, and then they say, it's good for your brand.
Yeah.
No.
And the other thing as well is like the most common for us is that, can I pick your brain?
Yes.
Can we just have 5 minutes conversation? I said, no, sorry.
That'll cost you.
Because that will cost you money, right? Sometimes to put a presentation for a client, you have to charge because you're going to spend time on that. We might not get the event, but you are actually spending time and you're putting all your IP into that presentation that's going to be shared with the client, right? So sometimes we do charge for presentations as well. So just knowing that when you stick to it, just be proud of what you do and just go, this is my price, this is what you do. If you want that level, of course, sometimes when you're starting your business, you just go, a discount here or,
I think when you're starting,
but
easier.
It takes time for you to be comfortable with yourself and your product and your business to be able to do that, right?
But it is frustrating though, I guess. But when you're first starting out, you have to do, and I know I did things for nothing because it was building, it was a good brand building exercise. Yeah. So unfortunately you can't be really, really young and suddenly go, no, I want this much money when you really have nothing to show, no experience yet. But yeah, it's a tough one, and it's only going to get worse. Yeah, exactly.
It's true. We used to charge for pitching as well.
Look, if you're a startup and you have an amazing idea and you think it's going to fly and nobody else is doing it, then there's no issue for you to charge for it. But you have a captive audience, so you just got to have to work out who you're pitching to. If you are a 25-year veteran or 30-year veteran who starts up a consultancy business, who's been running hotels or whatever in the background, you know what you're worth. So, that sort of stipulates what you should charge. But it is a very competitive market, and we've learned in my business to walk away, and that's hard sometimes because some of these contracts can be ongoing and they can actually be good, long term. But it's so cheap that the guys that I would contract to be part of QCC to work on it wouldn't be paid.
Yes,
and it just doesn't add up.
Yeah.
So you got to be really transparent with your team. And some of them will come to us and say, hey guys, like this is a great contract, let's sign it. It's like, it's not good for the business. So you got to be completely open-minded with that.
Yeah. Darryl?
Can I just go back to something you said? You said, how do you deal with rejection? And that's a really important thing to deal with. I walked up and down Pitt Street, literally knocking on banks' doors. And there's a TV show about that. And I have to say to you that the most critical thing is belief. I spoke about a vision. If you turn that vision into an affirmation and you believe, you'll walk through walls. In terms of what you've picked up on, that's common now post-COVID. I can't believe how service standards, and I'm not going to go on, have fallen across the board, and people want more for less. That's so. But turn it around on a head, and it's an opportunity. If you think about it, if you flip it, it becomes a real opportunity.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more.
There's one more, I think. Was it?
I believe everyone's spoken a little bit about following your vision. Is there any advice you can give us students on how we can form our own visions and our own grand ideas that we can have that same passion about?
I guess, find your passion first, but I guess that's sometimes hard, isn't it, to actually realise what is it that I'm so passionate about. But I'm sure one of our panellists will. Excuse me.
So, there's a Japanese concept. It's ikagi. But basically ikigai. So it's ikigai, and basically it is, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? What can you get paid for? And there's one more concept within that. And you can find your purpose. You go through, you ask yourself all those questions, and hopefully you land on what is it you really care about? What are you really good at? What can you get paid for? And find your purpose, find your vision, find what you want to do.
And sometimes that doesn't happen at your age now. Some of us are still searching.
I think you don't have to be in a hurry to find your purpose. Like, you're here. Enjoy the time you're here, and purpose will find you. Go and work in industry, see what's out there, and then make up your own mind. As long as you feel whatever job you're in, as long as you are creatively challenged, I think, then you stay on and you learn from that. As time comes, you move on, you do something else, you experience something differently. But you also know, I'm a firm believer in this, you know when the time is right for you to do it on your own and start up. It may not be on your own, but your ideas will come to fruition, and then you push that out. And then you go, okay, now, like Darryl, I have to go and raise millions of dollars, and this is what I want to do, and I live for that. That's that purpose that you then get. So I wouldn't rush it. Just take your time.
I think there was one. Was there one more?
I would simply add one more thing to that. It's interesting. It's a good question. If you think about what you dream about, and what you dream about is probably coming from your heart, and that's a really good place to start in life. So I wouldn't push it, like Caspar's saying. It can happen at any time. But what you dream about is often what your vision will be.
Beautiful. So anyone?
I think we can closing thoughts.
Oh, well, I think that was brilliant. So thank you to the four of you. I mean, I learned so much as well, which I'm very excited about that. Thank you all for coming. And every single face I looked at, I think there was genuine interest in hearing about the startup world. I mean, it is hard. It's tough. It's difficult to sort of, as we said before, take that leap and have the confidence to say, no, I know what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. So hopefully, after hearing the wise words from our panel, Fernando, Nandeeta, Caspar, and of course the guru, Darryl, thank you so very much for your time, and I hope we'll do it again, who knows when. But thank you, and thank you all for taking the time. And thank you, Nicole.
Thank you very, very much to our panel.